Hello friends and welcome to lesson 2 of unit 2 where we are going to talk about competition law and right to information act. So these are two very important acts for our country. So let us talk about these in detail. Learning objectives would be, we'll talk about Mrtp Act, we'll see what that is, Competition Act and then RTI. And let's have a debate today on how to tame the tech giants. When we talk about the competition, because it is very important to understand that the government always wants the efficiency, that means effective usage of the resources, and equity, that is the equal distribution of the resources. But at the same time, the government wants to see that there should not be any monopolies, any single company which is taking advantage of the consumers. So in order to stop such monopolistic practices and restrictive trade practices, where you might have seen in the old Hindi movies, people are hoarding, people are putting wrong practices, people are stopping other traders to reach to the consumers. So some of the unfair means are used to run the businesses. In order to stop all that, in 1969, government came up with MRTP Act, which means Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices. There were three broad objectives for this act. Number one, they never wanted to have concentration of economic power. They wanted to protect the consumers from unfair trade practices. And number three, they wanted a good competition so that there is right price for the consumers. So they formulated this policy and it came into play from 1969. Now till 1991, remember, before the liberalization, so we were trying to regulate the monopolies and we were trying to prevent the concentration of economic power. And what we were doing, we were trying to stop these companies, or we were trying that a company which has reached a particular size should not be able to grow further. So we were prohibiting the monopolies and restrictive trade practices. But if you remember in 1991, when we had our economic policy and we used LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization. So with that liberalization, we said we will not prohibit but will control the practices which are not in favor of the consumers. And the right word was regulating the restrictive and unfair trade practices. So the focus was different, but the objective or the objectives, they remain the same. So we need to understand two things here. One, the MRTP Act, which came in 1969 and then it was amended in 1991. And then in 2002, which we'll do in the next slide, is the Competition Act. So when we talk about the Competition Act, because there was a need for this from 91 to 2002, we looked at all the things and we thought that there should be one body which we called as Competition Commission of India, which has to oversee the entire country for the right competition, healthy competition, and also to see that no unfair trade practices are being executed by any of the businesses. So this Competition Act was passed in 2003. It was enacted in 2002 and passed in the Parliament in 2003. And in October, the Competition Commission of India was established. And the basic aim was to protect small and medium enterprises. There were a lot of mergers which were happening. For example, a big company, as we say, big fish always eat the small fish. So mergers were happening, acquisitions were happening, which were not very healthy. So the CCI was mandated to look at all these unfair practices. So the objectives were to prohibit anti-competitive agreements, to prohibit the use of dominant position. We'll understand the dominant position in just 1 minute, and to regulate combinations including the mergers. So when we say dominant position, that means that is a situation where maybe one or maybe few enterprises who hold significant power in terms of concentration of money in their market, that they can control the prices or the output or some of the terms with which they work with their suppliers, and try to stop the competition or don't want any other competition to come into the market. So then they get a dominant position where they control the prices. So it is not a monopoly, but it can be 2 or 3 companies joining hands and trying to dominate the market. So the Competition Commission of India was set up, and the role was just the same as when we say why the competition is needed. So it was to promote healthy competition in the market. So the right quantities at the right price are available to the consumers in the market, and how you can reduce the cost of various products and services so that the consumer demand is met. Efficiently using the resources, and as I said earlier, you need to create the conducive market conditions so that the markets are able to deliver the products and services, especially the basic consumer products, to the population at large. So it is the simple objective that a healthy market should be there. And a healthy market can only be there if there is healthy competition. If there is no competition, then healthy market cannot be there. Having talked about the monopolies, today what is happening all over the globe, and if we talk just about our country, India, we are seeing internet monopolies in spite of CCI being there. Now Competition Commission of India, they have been conducting a market survey, and they started in 2019. But if we look at today the digital marketing, 85% of digital advertising is controlled by Google and Facebook. So Google is the largest digital advertising firm in India, and basically through its YouTube video, it is dominating the advertising, the digital advertising of our country. Facebook is the second largest digital advertising firm. So it is using two tools. One is the social media app, which is Instagram, and the other is WhatsApp, which are the most popular apps in our country. If I talk of e-commerce, 85% of the consumer e-commerce market is ruled by Walmart, Flipkart, and Amazon India. If I talk of cabs, 90% of digital call hailing market is dominated by Ola and Uber. And they have a common investor, which is SoftBank, and who is the largest shareholder in both the companies. So in a way, these are the digital internet monopolies. So it will be interesting to see what CCI do and how they are trying to look at these monopolies. Similarly, when we talk about the government monopoly in India, what the government monopolies are and where we stand vis-a-vis these monopolies. There are many, but I'll take three examples. Indian Railways. This is a state-owned railway company of India and one of the largest and busiest rail networks in the world. But very recently, Indian government has allowed FDI to invest in railways. State electricity boards, we call them SEBs. So these are by the state governments, and you are purchasing all the electricity from SEBs. Most of it, private sector has entered. Third is HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Again, this is a public sector undertaking. Huge domestic monopoly for the production of aircrafts. So in 2011, government has allowed investment, foreign direct investment up to 26% in it. Although on one side government is trying that these are some of the areas where they try to keep the cost low, they try, and also the price at which the consumers take these products. But what is happening, in a way, the public money is being used to run these and they are becoming white elephants, so they are going into losses. Although these are monopolies, but these monopolies are making a dent in the public money. So these monopolies have to be broken, and that is why FDIs and privatization is happening, and so like Air India is one. Indian Railways, you can see FDI is coming there. So either they have to become efficient, or you need to privatize and increase the FDI so that they are able to sustain. The other thing we would like to discuss in this lesson is right to information. So one act was passed in 2005, and every citizen was given this right as a fundamental democratic right, that they have the right to information. The purpose of this was to make the government accountable, because government was not responding to any citizen, and the work was just, and corruption was increasing. In order to stop that, they said every citizen has the right to take notes, extracts, documents, records from the government. They can inspect works documents, records. They can obtain information in any mode, and they can take samples of the material being used for public infrastructure. So this was a very strong act, because of which the accountability of the government has been taken care of. But at the same time, it has some ill effects, because some of the work, because of RTI, people don't want to do, and they try to delay, and that's a negative impact. But having said so, it's a very good tool in the hands of the citizens. So under this, what the government has done, again, they have set up a Central Information Commission. Now you have a Chief Information Commissioner, and then you have Information Commissioners in each state. So the Central Information Commission can have 10 members, and they are appointed by the President, recommended by the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, and Union Cabinet Minister nominated by PM. And again, only can be removed by the President, and there is a process for that. So when we talk about RTI, the basic purpose was to make the government open so that it is accessible, it becomes collaborative, and it becomes more innovative. Because by people intervention, the participation, the accountability, and transparency will increase. It is very simple. It is your fundamental right to see the government records. You have to pay ₹10 to get that information, and the officer has to reply within 30 days. If the officer is not replying, then there is a penalty of $250 per day on that officer to whom it has been addressed. Well, we have talked about the Competition Act and the RTI. Government can do a lot, but let's look at not one country but the whole world. You have 3 tech giants, if I have to name them. So this is Google, Facebook, Amazon. They are controlling the entire world one way or the other. So question is, how can you tame these tech giants? What you should do to stop them to monopolize the whole world, whether it is e-commerce, whether it is the net, whether it is the data of the people. So what is happening? Their size is becoming so huge that it is not in the hands of one country, and that is what we discussed earlier, a case study as the European Commission putting a huge fine there because of unfair trade practices. So my question to all of you is that what do you think, how can you tame these tech giants? Think about that, and we can have a debate, and then we'll see this video. You can note down your points. You can put the things in the chat box so that I can see what your views are. Well, you have gathered your views. Let's have a look at this video now.
Can you imagine life without Google, Facebook, or Amazon? Chances are you're actually
on one of those platforms right now watching this. These companies have utterly transformed how we buy goods online and consume information online. But there's a growing view that the big web platforms need to be reined in. Google handles around 90% of searches in many countries, and that gives it unprecedented access over information that people get. Facebook connects over 2 billion users, or a quarter of the world's population. Both companies dominate online advertising, which is how they make their money, considering that their services are free. Amazon accounts for over 40% of retail sales in America and has a huge market share elsewhere. That lets it dictate terms to suppliers. Of course, The companies are successful because they're innovative, they're dynamic, and they bring a lot of value to consumers. The problem is that their size brings worries. Today, the major web companies are among the biggest firms in the world. A little over a decade ago, they barely made the list. Critics worry that they're bad. That's big, anti-competitive, addictive, and destructive to democracy. Now, most of the concerns are overblown. Being big isn't illegal. But the anti-competitive worries are real, and we see early signs of it. Google has been fined by European regulators for favoring its own apps. Facebook has bought up startups that could have competed against it. The market share of the tech giants, it's as large as the industrial giants of the past. At the time, regulators broke up the companies or treated them as utilities. Neither approach is going to work today. First, they should scrutinize even small mergers for potentially anti-competitive effects. This will prevent the tech giants from buying up firms that could become rivals. And second, regulators should consider giving individuals rights over their data and potentially require the platforms to share data to encourage competition. It's hard to imagine how that might work in practice since nothing like that has been done before. But it is not impossible, and just the threat of this compulsory openness might enforce good behavior.
So that is all about this video, and let's hope something comes out and we have some solution for these big tech giants. So let me wrap up the lesson for you. We discussed MRTP Act, Competition Act, RTI Act, and also then we looked at the video and also had a debate how to tame the tech giants. Well, here is your small quiz. Question number 1 is, what MRTP stands for? Question number 2, RTI Act came in which year? Question number 3, name the 3 tech giants. You can check your answers. MRTP stands for Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practices. RTI Act came in 2005. And the 3 tech giants are Google, Facebook, and Amazon. So that is all from my side. If you have any questions, feel free to write to me. And if you want to go for some further reading, these are the 2 articles I have put in. One is the YouTube video that you saw, and the other is there is one amendment to the competition bill which is going to come this year. So let us see how that is going to change the Indian market. Thank you very much for being there. So I'll come up with the next lesson very soon. Bye for now. Shabba khair.